Hello everybody, and welcome to this very special series where we're looking at Pluto and his transit through each of the whole sign houses. I'm so excited to be sharing this series with you. If you like this video, then please like, share and subscribe to my channel. And if you would like to study astrology further and in depth with me and even gain a certification if you desire, then please consider joining my classes at the Royal Stars Academy. The link is in the description below. Now, on the 23rd of March 2023, which is ahead in time at the moment that I am recording this, but maybe you're watching this after that has occurred, Pluto will make his first foray into the sign of Aquarius since he was last there in 1781. Now, it's been a long time between Aquarian transits for the little planet Pluto. As such, I thought it would be a good time to talk about Pluto changing signs and what it will mean for everyone depending on your rising sign in whole sign astrology. So this video series will be applicable whenever Pluto changes signs in the future. But as I'm recording this in the run-up to Pluto in Aquarius in 2023, it's very pertinent to us now and will be pertinent to us for almost 20 years as Pluto moves through this sign, the sign of Aquarius. Now, Pluto is an unusual planet in astrology and also in astronomy. So for a start, he has an elliptical orbit, which means that he spends different lengths of time in each zodiac sign. I'm going to talk about the lengths of time a little later in this introduction. But check out this diagram of Pluto's orbit and you'll see how different it is to all the other planets in the solar system. So let's look a little more now at the astronomy of Pluto. So although astronomically it's classified as a dwarf planet, in astrology we all know that Pluto packs a massive punch, but more on the astrology of Pluto a little bit later. However, just because an object is small and because an object is far away doesn't mean that it's not powerful. Pluto is atomically powerful, and anyone who's familiar with astrology will know that he is really punchy. So our moon, Luna, it weighs 6 times as much as Pluto does. It's more hefty in that sense. First little tidbit of information astronomically about Pluto. We realize that he is a small object at the far reaches of the solar system. It's quite amazing that we know of his existence, actually, especially as our moon is more weighty than he is. It takes 248 years for Pluto to do a complete cycle around the sun. And Pluto's average surface temperature is a very chilly minus 230 degrees Celsius. It actually feels like that today where I am as I'm recording this in the middle of winter. Minus 280 degrees Celsius is actually minus 382 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can imagine, wherever you are in the world, how cold that actually is. Not surprising considering Pluto is at the far reaches of the solar system, a long way from the sun. Now, Pluto has 5 known moons and is classified, as I said, as one of the dwarf planets, along with Eris, who is the largest of the dwarf planets, but also Haumea, Makemake, and Ceres. They're the other dwarf planets that we know of. Now, Pluto was discovered in 1930 by the American astronomer Clyde Tombaugh, and in fact, there's we'll talk about this in a minute, but there is a glacier on Pluto that they've named after the man who discovered Pluto. And Pluto resides in the Kuiper belt at the very edge of the solar system beyond Neptune. And the name Pluto was actually suggested by a young 11-year-old child named Venetia Burney, and she was a mythology lover. So contrary to popular opinion, she didn't name Pluto after the Disney dog. In fact, the naming of the Disney dog came not long after the naming of the tiny planet, who was named after Pluto in ancient mythology. And we're going to talk about that very soon. One thing that fascinates me about Pluto is that when the shuttle, the New Horizons shuttle, went past Pluto in 2015, it took some photos as it passed by this tiny planet. Once again, check out these photos. Now you'll notice this heart-shaped colouring on the side of Pluto. I find this fascinating. Well, this is a glacier named after the discoverer of Pluto, and it's a glacier of frozen nitrogen. Now, due to the heat or the temperature below the surface of this glacier, this heart shape slowly churns over the course of millennia. So it changes over the course of millennia. And scientists believe that the glacial churning is ice continually refreshing itself, which is why the glacier actually shows no signs of craterial impact. You know, like there's moons, Pluto has 5 moons, and they all show evidence of having been hit by, having craters because they've been hit by asteroids and things like that. This glacier has no evidence of that because of this churning that refreshes it. Keep that in mind. Keep the word refreshing in mind because it correlates as above, so below to how we understand Pluto in astrology. And keep in mind the significance of our first human beholding of Pluto, which revealed this beating heart. It refreshes, and you know, it expands and contracts and expands and contracts as part of its refreshing process. It ebbs and flows with the cycles of the warming and cooling that Pluto experiences as it travels around the sun. Because sometimes Pluto is closer to the sun than at other times, and that affects its speed as it travels through the zodiac signs. So, in essence, Pluto's temperature ebbs and flows, which causes this heart to ebb and flow as it refreshes its cycle. It's the beating heart of Pluto. This is very important to remember when we come to talk about the astrology shortly. Now, scientists also believe that when Pluto was a very young planet, it probably contained a H2O ocean, a water ocean. In fact, it's also likely to have some sort of water in an oceanic form still in existence underneath its icy crust. But of course, we haven't landed on Pluto to determine that. We're only surmising. So it's a planet of mysteries astronomically that are slowly but surely being revealed to all of humanity. And I find all these discoveries to be very exciting, especially when we see the world through the lens of the as above, so below Hermetic principle. What about the mythology of Pluto? Well, Pluto was in mythology the son of the Titan god Saturn, and he was one of 3 brothers and 3 sisters, and 2 of the brothers and the 3 sisters were eaten by Saturn or Kronos, and these gods that were eaten, these brothers and sisters that were eaten, were known collectively as the Olympians, and they were vomited up when they were rescued by their heroic brother and king of the gods, Jupiter. And I talked about the mythology of Jupiter in my series on Jupiter transiting through all the houses, if you want to check that out. But Pluto is one of these 3 supreme male deities of the ancient Olympian Parthenon, along with his siblings, Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto, they were the masculine ones, and his sisters, Juno, Vesta, and Ceres, the 6 of them. So Pluto was the mysterious Roman god of the dead and the lord of the underworld. And this is why I've got this little display happening here. We've got a face mask from the Day of the Dead here, some dead dried flowers. These are things that Pluto correlates to. We also have a succulent. Pluto rules succulents and cactuses. We're going to talk more about what Pluto rules shortly, but I just thought I'd explain why I've got that little display beside me to symbolize Pluto. He was the lord of the dead, the lord of the underworld. He was also known as the bringer of wealth, or the god of great wealth. So the name Pluto means the unseen one, and this is why Pluto was given this name, because he had been unseen and now was seen. So very pertinent to the astronomical naming of Pluto, which I've just described. Pluto lived in underground, gloomy places, and he seemed to, as a god, have very little interest in the world of men. But similarly, he also had very little interest in the affairs of the gods as well, and he tended to avoid associating with men and gods. He was very much the loner god. He was a figure in ancient mythology of enormous dread, terrible might, like very powerful god. And he was a god who dispensed luck and controlled the fates of mortals. Pretty full on, hey? He ruled the regions within the earth and everything that came out of inner earth, so to speak, the minerals, the precious stones. And this is part of the reason he was known as the god of great wealth. Pluto was the Roman counterpart to the Greek god Hades. And Hades was the Greek god who ruled the underworld in Greek mythology. Pluto rode a chariot and he carried a staff in his hand, and he was often accompanied by Cerberus, a three-headed dog that served as both his pet and a guardian of the underworld. And if you've watched movies and so forth about mythology, you probably will have seen that three-headed dog represented. I think it's in the film Clash of the Titans, if I'm not mistaken, old film from the 60s or 70s. But one of Pluto's most famous myths centered around his abduction of the young woman Persephone and the grief of her mother, the goddess Ceres. So Pluto, this loner god living in the gloomy underworld, rarely interacting with gods or mankind, was pitied by the goddess Venus. So she told her son Cupid to fire one of his love arrows at Pluto so that he would fall in love with the next woman that he saw. And that woman was Persephone. She was playing in the fields at Nysa. So his passion and his desire was uncontrollable because of this arrow that had been fired at him by Cupid. Keep that passion and desire element in mind. It's very pertinent to the astrology of Pluto, actually. So in his passion, in his desire, he abducted Persephone in his chariot. And following her abduction, her mother, Ceres, searched high and low for her missing daughter in a panic and grief. And her search was fruitless because nobody knew where she'd gone. Persephone was in the underworld, and she became there the unwilling bride of Pluto. People in some mythologies refer to it as the rape of Persephone. But in essence, she became the queen of the underworld. Pluto, on the other hand, he refused to acknowledge that he had kidnapped her. He refused to even let it be known where she was, so she was being held in secret. I mean, one of these horrible experiences, and it brings to mind all these dreadful experiences that we sometimes hear in the news about abductions and kidnapping, and people have been held prisoner for years and so on, and what grief that must cause the parents and family involved. Ceres, similarly, grew very thin. She grew pale and emaciated due to her great grief, her sorrow, and her constant searching for her daughter. Now, Ceres was the goddess of agriculture and fertility. And because of her sorrow and her emaciated appearance, it correlated to what was happening on the earth, and the earth suffered. The land and the animals became barren and infertile. Agriculture suffered because the goddess governing those things was not in her power. She was grieving. Now, Mercury, the messenger god, informed Jupiter of Persephone's whereabouts. He happened to have heard on the grapevine where she was, and he let Jupiter know where she was. And Jupiter ordered his brother Pluto, because Jupiter was the king of the gods and everybody sort of bowed down to Jupiter. He was the rescuer, the hero who saved them from their father. So Jupiter ordered that Pluto release Persephone at once, and he did that because he wanted to restore the fertility to the earth. And of course, Pluto had to comply to avoid the wrath of his brother, the king of the gods, Jupiter. So having no choice, Pluto returned Persephone, but on the proviso that she had not eaten anything while she was in the underworld, because if she had, she would therefore belong to the underworld if she'd ingested anything that came from the underworld. And it was discovered that Persephone had consumed a few pomegranate seeds while she was in the underworld. And so Pluto demanded that Persephone should remain with him for a portion of each year. Jupiter agreed to this demand because she had consumed fruit from the underworld, pomegranate seeds. And so he ordered that Persephone would spend half her time with Ceres on the earth and half her time with Pluto in the underworld. And now we see this represented in the seasons. You know, Persephone leaves the earth in early autumn, and we start to, things die down, things get cold and wintry, the earth is infertile and frozen and barren, and she returns back to Ceres. Persephone comes back to her mother in early spring. And this is obviously when things begin to bloom, the days get warmer, and we find that things start to fruit and flourish again. So during her absence, Ceres is grieving and the world grows barren. And when she returns, the world flourishes back to life. And you notice the symbology here? Death and rebirth, very much associated with the essence of Pluto. That he rules death, but he is also associated with the rebirthing phase due to this mythology. So due to Pluto's mysterious nature and his association with death, he was not a central figure in the worship of Roman state religion. So there were no state festivals, no temples, no dedications in his honor. He had little to do with the world of men, and men tended, the world of mankind tended to avoid him as well. So let's talk about Pluto in astrology. This gets really interesting and exciting. Pluto is the modern ruler of the sign of Scorpio, and like the mysterious water sign, they do share many similarities in the things that they govern. Now, Pluto is really the planet that defines the 20th century, the century that's just been, because he entered our collective consciousness. In other words, he was discovered and we became aware of him in 1930. Now, obviously, he had existed for millennia before that, but we only found out about Pluto as human beings on the Earth in 1930. And so Pluto has connections to everything that manifested around that time, sort of within 20 years either side of 1930. Now, this includes atomic energy, nuclear power, plutonium, weapons of mass destruction. Those heavy-duty things that I've just mentioned, I mean, imagine the permanent winter that would be visited upon the Earth in the event of a nuclear holocaust. Persephone might never return if those things were unleashed on the Earth. Pluto has governance of those things. Let's hope they're never unleashed, because we rather enjoy having Persephone return in the springtime. So the Pluto in Leo generation, I'll talk about the generations of Pluto in just a second. The Pluto in Leo generation were the first full generation born into the conscious awareness of Pluto. So Pluto was halfway through the sign of Cancer when he was discovered. And so by the time the Pluto and Leo generation, the baby boomers, were being born, everybody knew about Pluto. He was in full conscious awareness. So the Pluto and Leo generation, all of them, everyone born with Pluto and Leo, hold this awareness and their consciousness and their human state of Pluto and his amazing power, amazing and terrifying power. And it's really interesting to me to observe what's going on in the world now in 2022 as I'm recording this, that it's the Pluto and Leo generation that are holding the power of Pluto in their hands. And the eventuality of whether we go into a nuclear winter or not is in the hands of the leaders of our day and age, which, for better or worse, are the Pluto in Leo generation. So Pluto is the planet that defines the generations. Let me go through the examples. And as I do this, you'll see how Pluto spends different lengths of time in different signs because he has this very strange orbit. So Pluto was in Leo from 1937 to 1956. He was 19 years in the sign of Leo. This is the baby boomer generation. Pluto was in Virgo from 1956 to 1971. 15 years. You can see it's getting less. 15 years in the sign of Virgo. This is the Generation X or the group 1, if you like, of Generation X. And then Pluto was in Libra from 1971 to 1983, 13 years in this sign. It's getting less again. This was group 2 of Generation X, because some people in this generation classify themselves as Generation X. But I have read that this generation is also known as the Xennials, Xennials, the Xennials. Then Pluto was in Scorpio from 1983 to 1985. Only 12 years in the sign of Scorpio. This is where Pluto spends his shortest length of time, in the sign of Scorpio. And this is Gen Y, the millennials, Pluto and Scorpio generation. I'm excited by this generation because it's this generation, Gen Y, the millennials, and because they are born with Pluto in Scorpio, the sign that Pluto rules, they are waking the world up to the power of astrology and the occult again. And they're very intense. They're a very intense generation. We'll find out why, because as we go along here, because Pluto is a very intense planet, powerful people, powerful generation, powerful planet in a very powerful position. So this generation are going to be the movers and shakers. They're going to be the ones who change the world and hopefully regenerate the world and bring the springtime back to the world from what has been stolen, which I believe has been stolen over the last 80 years or so. And we're getting up to sort of 90 to 100 years since Pluto has been discovered. So very interesting generation to keep an eye on. The Pluto in Sagittarius generation goes from 1995 to 2008. Pluto was 13 years in this sign. This is Generation Z. Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto spent 15 years in the sign of Capricorn from 2008 to 2023. Now we're coming to the conclusion of the Pluto in Capricorn years, and it has been said that this is known as Generation Alpha, this particular generation. Then from 2023 to 2043, Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. And this is going to be 20 years in this sign. A new generation will begin in 2023. Pluto will then be in Pisces from 2043 to 2068, 25 years in the sign of Pisces. He's going to be 29 years in the sign of Aries, which is going to last from 2068 to 2097. Then he's going to move into Taurus for 33 years. And you know, Taurus sits opposite Scorpio. This is where Pluto spends the longest duration, 33 years in the sign of Taurus, from 2097 to 2130. 2130 is when that period, that generation, is going to end. And then we will have Pluto in Gemini. That's going to be for 30 years. Now the length of time in a sign starts to decrease. This is going to last from 2130 to 2160, 30 years in the sign of Gemini. And then Pluto in Cancer from 2160 to 2186, 26 years in the sign of Cancer. And then we're back to Pluto in Leo all over again. So that's how Pluto governs the generations. It's a very generational planet, and we define our generational influences by the length of time Pluto spends in each sign. So in any singular lifetime, Pluto is only ever going to transit 3 to at most 6 houses, because he just takes that long to move through a sign. So therefore, the transits of Pluto that you will have in your lifetime are extremely important to your life. You incarnated to experience those particular transits for the growth of your soul, for better or worse. Now, not everyone's going to experience a transit of Pluto to the powerful first house, but those that do will experience life-changing results. Not everyone's going to experience a transit of Pluto to the 10th house, but those that do are likely to go through a powerful change in how they are perceived by the world at large. Not everyone's going to go through a Pluto transit to the 3rd house, but those that do will experience extraordinary up-leveling of intuition and communicative skills. So wherever Pluto is making his transits over the course of your lifetime, is just what your soul needs for your growth. So Pluto is the expression, this is what Pluto rules in astrology, what he's all about in astrology. He is power and powerful people, control, hidden realms, anything that's taboo, anything that brings a crisis into our life. Nuclear holocaust, big time crisis, that's Pluto. You know, any type of crisis is a Pluto event. Pluto also has to do with purging in our life, releasing, letting go of, excreting and getting rid of things. That's Pluto. Pluto also rules renewal. Hence we have that mythology of the renewal of the springtime after the winter. Death and rebirth, renewal, transformation. Big mythology of change, you know, winter to spring, that transformation from cold to warmth, from death to life. Pluto rules those things. Anything in life that brings a transformation is from Pluto, or considered a Plutonian experience. Pluto rules rebirthing, regeneration, renovation. He brings hidden things that are secret, out into the light. Remember his name and the meaning of his name, that which is hidden. And then he's been discovered in our lifetime. We have brung the hidden things into the light. Pluto rules, or has to do with having incredible ambition, second to none. People with Pluto strong in their chart, on the ascendant or conjunct with the sun or the moon, maybe on the midheaven as well. People who have Pluto strong in their chart are the masters of ambition, the masters of hustle. They get things done. They make it happen, because that's what Pluto's all about. In a sense, Pluto is a bit like Jupiter. Jupiter amplifies in astrology whatever it connects with, or wherever it sits in a horoscope. Jupiter makes it bigger, larger, bigger than life. However, rather than amplification, Pluto, because amplification is Jupiter, Pluto tends to give tremendous power to wherever it sits in life. For example, Pluto in a conjunction with Venus gives powerful desires and powerful passions. Just like in the mythology, when Venus told her son to fire the arrow at Pluto, what did it give to Pluto? Powerful desire, powerful passion. Same deal in astrology. When Venus and Pluto are sitting together in the chart, powerful desire, powerful passion present in your life. When Pluto sits with the sun, you get a powerful ego, a powerful sense of identity. Wherever Pluto sits, whatever planet it sits with, whatever house it's in, it's going to empower that realm of our life. So there's tremendous intensity wherever Pluto sits in a chart. Pluto strong people can actually be very intense people, because Pluto's an intense planet, and they can often be very polarizing. Why is that? Well, we are at one end of the solar system, sitting up near the sun, getting nice and warm. Where's the other end? The polaric opposite, Pluto, right out in the Kuiper Belt. Pluto can be polarizing. We either love Pluto people, or they turn us right off and we want to have nothing to do with them. Madonna has Pluto in her first house, those who are familiar with the singer Madonna from the 80s and early 90s. And I always found her to be one of the most polarizing celebrities. I couldn't understand why everybody liked her so much. Okay, her music was fine and everything, but as a person, I just found her completely off-putting. And that's my opinion, which I'm entitled to. You're entitled to yours. But she has Pluto in her first house. And people either loved her to bits, or they just were like, what the? No way. So Madonna is a perfect example of how polarizing, to my mind, a Plutonian type person can be. Pluto is a planet that decomposes. That's what death does. It sort of eats away at things, the maggots and the what have you, eating away at the flesh, decomposes things. Pluto also composts things. And what do we do when we compost something? We throw it on our plants, we throw it on our garden. And what happens then? The daffodils come up, the roses bloom brighter and stronger and with greater scent. Our decomposition, our composting of whatever's going on in our life gives a rebirth to fruiting and flourishing. That's Pluto energy. The phoenix bird is also associated with Pluto. What is the phoenix bird all about? The death. If you've watched Maleficent, the film Maleficent, very Plutonian character, Maleficent. What happens in the sequel to Maleficent? She, not to give the plot away, but she dies and is reborn as the phoenix bird. So very Plutonian imagery. Again, Pluto is the ancient god of great wealth, as well as the god of the underworld in mythology. So in our underworld times, when we go through the darkness, when we go through the shadow period of our life, the deep journey of the soul, then we often discover the hidden reserves of personal power in those times. We discover enlightenment in that dark night of the soul. We discover the resilience within which transforms us and enables us to emerge into our power, into our springtime, out of the darkness into the springtime. So this is what true wealth is. Yes, Pluto also has connections to physical wealth, to jewels and gold and things that come from within the earth and the wealth that it generates. Definitely has connections to that. But true wealth is found when we've gone through the dark night of the soul, our underworld experiences, our inner battle psychologically, and we've come out the other side. We've faced death, and death no longer has any fear for us because we've been into the darkness and we emerge into our power and our springtime. People with Pluto strong in their chart tend to go through times like that in life that transform them. And, you know, they might start out in life with their power taken away from them through sickness or through abuse or difficulties or whatever. But when they go through the darkness and they emerge out the other side, they stand in their power, having overcome the sickness, the abuse, the darkness that their life has represented. Pluto strong people have a difficult course to chart in life, but a great personal power that they can generate that can serve them well once they emerge into their springtime and take their power back. Now, there is a shadow side to Pluto, if you haven't already gathered. What I've talked about is perhaps the more positive sides of Pluto that we can work with and utilize: personal power, great wealth, composting and rebirthing ourselves. These are actually positives that we can utilize in our life, transformation. But there is a very dark side to Pluto, naturally. Cruelty and abuse are associated with Pluto, and usually we find those exhibiting when we find Pluto in hard aspect with Mars, or occasionally with Saturn as well. Pluto expresses either as the giver of the abuse. So if you've got Pluto, let's say in a conjunction with Mars, for example, it's not always going to exhibit this way, but it can work out through that conjunction of Mars and Pluto, that we are the giver of abuse to others. We're abusive. But it can also work out that people with Pluto-Mars conjunction are also the recipients of the abuse in life. So if you have a Pluto-Mars conjunction, you might have experienced a lot of abuse in your life. And you need to be very consciously aware of not becoming the abuser who gives it out to others because you've suffered it. So cruelty and abuse are the shadow side that we see with Pluto energy. Pluto also is willpower. Now that can be positive if we're using our willpower to overcome our life's difficulties, but willpower that destroys things, ambition that stops at nothing, is the shadow side of Pluto energy. And many politicians and successful people have a strong Pluto in their chart because they have this ruthless ambition, this willpower that stops at nothing to dominate and control everything. That's the shadow. That's another shadow side of Pluto, and it's really heavy duty. Pluto strong people can be edge walkers. What do I mean by that? Well, think about it. Pluto resides on the edge of the solar system. Thus, he represents the edge of our conscious knowledge. risk takers in a very dark sense of the word, people who err on almost the evil side. They're willing to go to the edge and associate with nasty people and make deals with the devil and those sorts of things. Now, you can be an edge walker in positive Pluto energy as well, and this would look like somebody who enjoys extreme sports or someone who loves mystery and crime novels. My kids are actually very into this, to be honest. They love the sort of like the horror-y kind of scary films and that sort of thing. They love the sort of dark fairy tales and that kind of stuff. So that's things that get your adrenaline pumping, things that get you on the edge of your seat. That's what it means to be an edge walker, and that's the positive expression. If you've got Pluto strong in your chart and you want to counteract any sort of evil inclinations, then go and read lots of crimes and thrillers and horrors. Get into that stuff. Read up about serial killers and deep psychological understanding of the criminal mind, and research those things, because the more you get involved in the positive expression of Pluto energy, the less you're going to have a desire to go into the ruthless, evil, cruel, other shadow side that is Pluto energy. Now, I've talked a lot about the darkness of Pluto in this introduction, and I want to come back to what I talked about earlier now, which is what the New Horizons probe discovered when it flew past Pluto in 2015, and that was the heart, the beating heart on the side of Pluto. This is very much an as above, so below principle that we're seeing here. Pluto has a heart. He did have a heart in mythology. He fell passionately in love with Persephone. Okay, well, he was cruel and he, abducted her and what have you. But there is a heart there that feels things deeply. Plutonian people do feel very deeply, very intensely, very passionately. This heart on the side of Pluto should represent to us the passion that is available to us. We all have Pluto somewhere in the chart. We all have passions and desires in relation to something in our life. And it is okay to honor those things, heart-centered. And I want to just bring to light the awareness that often when we go through our shadow experiences, our darkness, our, the evil side of who we are, or we're in a state of melancholy and depression and deep struggle with life, we're in our underworld phase. Just know, if you're going through that at the moment, if you're experiencing fear or trauma of some sort, that you have the ability within you to regenerate and rebirth and come back with a strong heart that is capable of loving again, that is capable of experiencing and feeling once more good things in the sunshine and the springtime. Pluto has a heart. There is gold in the underworld experiences that you have, and there is a renewal in the underworld experiences that you go through, and we all go through them. There is also love at the core of what Pluto does in our life. Why? Because Pluto really does want to heal us, because he loves us. A couple of my girlfriends and I have had many discussions, my astrologically minded girlfriends have had many discussions about Pluto. A number of my highly intuitive girlfriends believe that Pluto is actually a feminine planet. Now, he was an ancient god of masculine quality, but there is also something deeply, passionately feminine, and Pluto rules a feminine sign, Scorpio. I'm not here to get into a debate about whether or not Pluto is a masculine or feminine planet or energy. That's something that you're welcome to do in the discussion comments section. But I do want people to keep in mind that Pluto has a heart, that there is a purpose to your underworld experiences. And if you see your difficult experiences in life as a chance to renew yourself and discover the gold and the strength within you, the power that is within you, then you will come out victorious. there is purpose to Pluto difficulties. That said, Pluto in karmic astrology is one of the most powerful planets. He is the planet of trauma and the trauma of our past lives. He represents that in the chart, where our traumas in past lives have come from. Plus, he also represents the antidote to our trauma, the healing of our trauma, the renewal of ourselves after our karmic darkness. So if you're interested in karmic astrology, then do come study with me at the Royal Stars Academy. We will be exploring Pluto karma in greater depth in the courses that I offer there. So just to briefly sum up with a few things that Pluto rules, like I said, succulents and cactus, dead things, festivals that have to do with death and rebirth. Pluto rules blowflies. Pluto rules toilets and plumbing. Pluto rules poisonous animals, abduction, obviously. Pluto rules cesspools. Pluto rules sex organs. Pluto rules the subconscious workings of the mind and the body. Pluto rules bombs. Pluto rules Godivas, catacombs, cemeteries. Pluto rules pests and pest control, plutonium, murder, monsters. Pluto rules psychology. Pluto rules sex, snakes, sorcerers. Pluto rules the subterranean realms of the earth. He rules taxation, terrorism, toilets, tombs. Pluto rules laser beams, kidnapping, marshes, massacres. Pluto rules masochism. Now, I need to just quantify that one or clarify that one. Pluto rules masochism in the sense of cruelty to others. That's the Plutonian side of masochism. Neptune also has associations with masochism in the sense that Neptune rules the self-debasement aspect of masochism. Okay, just to make clear that one. Anything morbid is ruled by Pluto. Anything black, which is why I'm wearing black for this series, is ruled by Pluto. Nuclear scientists are ruled by Pluto. Violence is ruled by Pluto. Wars, X-rays, victims, venom, vampires. Hope you got all those things down. There are a few things, and I hope that gives you some of the essence of this nuclear atomic planet that we are all living with in our charts these days. So let's move on now and see what Pluto represents for us when he transits certain houses in the horoscope. So how can we tell if Pluto is about to transit or is transiting through our 12th house? Well, it's really very simple. All we need to do is count how many houses Pluto currently is from our rising sign. So we need to know where Pluto is transiting, and we know for the next 20 years Pluto, as I'm recording this in 2022, is going to be transiting through Aquarius. So if we're Pisces rising, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And there is Pluto in our 12th house in whole sign astrology, the sign of Aquarius. So what does this mean when we've got Pluto transiting through the 12th house? Well, it is going to be a powerful time of inner growth for people. You're really going to expand who you are in the world and personally. Many people are going to dramatically reconnect with Source or God or the universe, whatever you want to call it. Our spiritual awareness just goes from to like way up there. We actually we may become more spiritually aware, spiritually empowered, conscious of spiritual things in a stronger way than we ever have before. So we dramatically reconnect with Source, God, whatever that looks like for us. So spiritual awareness is amplified. Yay, this sounds wonderful. We also tend to do a deep dive into our psyche and our inner selves. It's a house of psychology, the 12th house, one of the psychological houses. So we do a deep dive here. We go really deep. And Pluto rules psychology and psychological understanding. Pluto's all about revealing the hidden mysteries. And so here in the 12th house, the hidden mysteries of who we are, maybe who we were in past lives or who we are psychologically as a result of past lives. You know, we can also address and release our inner fears, our phobias, our complexes that have been caused by past lives, if we believe in reincarnation, or if we don't, caused by maybe the early stages of this life. We really want to release and let go of those things because Pluto wants to compost stuff wherever he goes. So he's going to compost all these fears and phobias and psychological complexes that are the result of our past life experiences. We want to understand our true core nature. Pluto wants to get to the bottom of it, to reveal it to us so we fully know who we are. Very, very empowering transit. So a lot of people during this particular transit, they tend to let go of worldly indulgences in order to pursue inner peace and inner contentment. So, okay, some people might go and meditate on a hillside and chant Om for the next 20 years. There will be some people who will take that route. But there'll be other people who are just like, you know what? I don't really care about where I live so much anymore. As long as I have, food in the cupboard and food on the table and a warm bed to sleep in, I'm grateful. I'm happy. I don't need to have all the big fancy whatevers. We kind of let go of our perceptions of what we need and we pursue just contentment and peace. We long to put an end to striving and hustle that's ego-based. We let go of all that now. So it doesn't mean that we're all going to become paupers. No, not at all. In fact, some people can do very, very well during this season of life, Pluto transiting the 12th house. But if we have to strive and push and hustle and burn ourselves out like we're a machine or something, that actually goes against the grain during this time. And because often that sort of thing is ego-based. I must prove myself. I must, I must earn big money so I can look like a big man or a big woman. That's striving. That's hustling. That's ego-based, and that is what disappears now. If you're striving and building what you can to help others, or from a pure motive of some sort, then thumbs up to you. It's not going to be so composted in quite the same way. But psychological inner work has powerful results during this transit because we become passionate, like I said, about uncovering hidden mysteries. This is the house of hidden mysteries, but hidden mysteries concerning ourself and our soul's journey. This is a liberation house, a moksha house. So liberation of the self comes through Pluto means. Pluto is, as I said, psychology, but it's also therapy. So it's a great time over the next 20 years to really dig into past life regression work, energy healing work, dream work, meditation, and any techniques that raise conscious awareness and understanding. As I said in the beginning, this aids this powerful time of soul expansion and soul growth. So we don't tend to feel quite as restricted by societal boundaries and expectations during this time because this is the house of no boundaries. Pisces people might be quite familiar with this. So we're not going to feel restricted by, the expectations of others or the rules of society. We kind of don't care. Big deal. I'm just going to live my life kind of thing. Our intuition can increase during this transit. Our psychic abilities expand as these psychological boundaries dissolve. We receive incredible downloads from other dimensions or interdimensional beings, angels, spirit guides, ascended masters, and so forth. They can actually connect with us quite amazingly now. And we can sort of, become like a psychic or a channeler. And even if we don't become that professionally, we just have this higher connection than we've ever had before with these practices, these energies, these entities. So our appreciation of the occult, the metaphysical, these sorts of things those sorts of understandings, it really increases, as will our capabilities with these methods. Also with astrology, tarot, energy healing work, psychic work, all that sort of stuff. It's an exciting transit. I'm really, really looking forward to it, actually. But mystical experiences obviously are going to abound during this time as well. Spiritual epiphanies, visions, divine healing, prophetic affirmations, powerful dreams. We're not even at this point yet. I'm already experiencing this as a Pisces rising person. At the moment, I just keep getting drawn to the right healer, the right prophetess, the right tarot card reader at just the right time in my life. It gives me goosebumps every time. I'll be in need. There's the right person. There's the right healer. It's like my soul just has learned how to manifest that and draw that in. And I know that this is a result of Pluto, who is currently, as I'm recording this, up here in the final degrees of Capricorn, getting ready to dip his toe into Aquarius. I know that's why, because that moment is coming soon and I'm already feeling into it. I can't wait. Now, another thing with this transit, we can feel very connected to nature, and that includes nature that goes far beyond the Earth realm. Like you might be outside one evening looking at a star far, far, far away, and you just feel a bond with that star, feel a connection with that star, special unity with that star for some reason. All of nature, not just the Earth, we feel bonded with. So this is common, as is anything that, this 12th house that's about boundarylessness. And so there's this boundarylessness connection with nature and the natural world. Now, some people during this transit might experience remembering past lives, and at that, often what's really interesting is, let's say we had an accident or something at age 20 in a past life, we can have a recollection of these past life experiences. Say an accident that occurred at 20 that impacted us in a past life, we might dream about that and recall that. And what that helps us do, these are the kinds of mystical experiences that can happen during Pluto's transit of the 12th house. What that might do is unravel the karmic baggage that accident left on our psyche once and for all, through going back into past life experiences. So that can happen through dreams, it can happen through regression work, it can happen through energy healing, it can happen through visions, it can happen through daydreaming. So these sorts of things that compost and release our past life, as I've said, karmic complexes. So we're also in the process with this transit of transcending our individuality and experiencing wholeness. This is the name of the game. It's time to merge with the infinite. So we feel connected to God, connected to that star out there. We feel connected to who we were in a past life and maybe who we're going to be in 13 lives' time. There's no more boundaries. We feel connected. We feel a sense of mergence with all that we are. Maybe we had a life on that star bazillions of years ago. Maybe, in 13 lives' time, we'll be back on that star again. Like we just feel the interconnectedness of the universe. And you might start to observe this, more synchronicity, more kind of no coincidences kinds of experiences that start manifesting in your life because of that. Some people believe that those who experience this transit in this particular incarnation might be having their final lifetime on the earth plane. Now, I have no way to prove that. It's just one theory regarding this transit of Pluto through the final house of the horoscope, the wrapping up, the ending, and Pluto is the planet of death. Pluto is also a soul journey planet, according to evolutionary astrology. So there is this theory that Pluto's transit through the final house of the horoscope as the planet of death and as the planet of the soul says, this is the final incarnation. You're wrapping things up if you've got this transit going on. I don't know. What do you think? Leave a comment in the comment section below about your thoughts on that topic. Now, some astrologers also believe, and I mentioned this in the previous video that I did last week, about Pluto in the 11th house, but some people also believe that Pluto is exalted in Leo. We talked about that last week, if you want to check out last week's video, because it was pertinent to last week's video. But some astrologers also believe that Pluto is exalted in Pisces, and therefore has strong associations with the 12th house, because Pisces and the 12th house carry similar themes. So in that sense, Pluto in the 12th house is considered to be very powerful and very positive if it's exalted in Pisces/12th house energies. So 12th house themes can be increased exponentially, greater imagination, greater understanding of the collective unconscious, more compassionate worldview. So all these beautiful healing abilities, miraculous healing, creative capacity, and creative expression just off the Richter scale, being inspired by the divine. Maybe you become a brilliant poet or something like that, a well-known phenomenal filmmaker. 12th house topics, can be very much amplified in a positive sense if this is correct, that Pluto is exalted in Pisces and therefore the 12th house in the energy. So I think that sounds really good. I'm all keen for that. Maybe it might bring me the ability to go and hang out in a retreat for the next 20 years, which is a 12th house thing, to live at a resort or a retreat. Bring it. By the same token, we also need to be careful of developing a savior complex. Now, this is the shadow side of Pisces / 12th house, where we think we have to rescue everybody else instead of allowing them the privilege of their own journey in life. We think that we have to be the savior. That's really sucky. We don't allow people the honor of being the instigator of their own healing. Saviors only end up enabling people's shitty behavior and enabling them to continue to be victims. Poor me, my life sucks, I'm so sad. Oh, let me help you, and we just keep facilitating the victimhood, and look, I'm a Pisces rising person. I know fully about this story, and I'm breaking away from that story that was part of my early life in this incarnation. So if you have a Pisces moon or a Pisces sun or a stellium in Pisces or something like that, you're probably familiar with the idea of being a savior or being involved in savior-victim kind of dynamics, very codependent. It's not healthy. So when Pluto is in Pisces, be really, really careful about going into, I am all-powerful, I'm going to be the savior of all the victims in the world, That's the shadow side here. So what are the keys to working with this particular transit? Well, instead of focusing on being a savior of others during this transit, instead look deeply at transforming yourself through personal understanding using the therapeutic practices that I described. Regression, psychology, art therapy, music therapy, dance therapy, deep self-analysis. Be honest now about both the good and the bad, like shadow side, that you find within you. This will be liberating. It's a moksha house, liberating, and help you to accept who you are as a soul in all its facets. That's where we need to be focusing with this transit, not on, I've got to sort of be everybody's savior. That's a very, very nasty shadow side of Pisces energy. And no coincidences, I'll just point out to people, no coincidences at all that the avatar for the age of Pisces was a man who became the savior of the world through dying on a cross. That's the Pisces energy in its shadow expression in a nutshell. How else can we work with this transit? Let's leave that topic aside. That could open a few Pandora's boxes, that topic. Well, we can work on wrapping up any unfinished Earth business. If this is our final incarnation, then what have we got to wrap up? What have we got to end? Even if we're young, what have we got on our bucket list? What do you want to see? If the Earth is your oyster, the world is your oyster, what is it that you want to do here while you're able to? Well, I'd make a bucket list and I'd try and tick a few things off during this time, this transit of Pluto. I'd be open to new mystical experiences and explorations. Maybe try a regression if you haven't before. Maybe, if you want to, try an out-of-body experience. Learn new psychological techniques or psychic techniques. Perhaps try flexing your new psychic muscles and learn to see auras or recognize energy patterns and that sort of thing. Keep a dream journal. Maybe work towards understanding the deep messages of spirit as well. Be open to these things, start exploring these things, and see what a difference they make in your life as you're empowered by Pluto being in your 12th house. Now, if we feel called to attend soul-expanding places and experiences like ashrams or sort of spiritual retreats or something, to be with inspirational people, don't deny this. The universe is pulling the strings for you now. Maybe your ancestors are pulling the strings for you now, wanting you to up-level and mature and grow in some way. So listen when your heart is calling you. Maybe you want to go to, South America and try ayahuasca or something like that. Well, why not? What's stopping you? Go and do it. Kick it off your bucket list. Working with divine healers, working with mystics, wisdom keepers, this is all big thumbs up, all very much approved of under this Pluto transit. Pluto's going to help you to pierce through any deceptions that have been made by charlatans in these realms. If you've been, you went to see a psychic and they were full of BS, well, Pluto helps you to sort of see through all that crap. This person's not the real deal, but that person is. You'll know who's real. You'll see to the core of it. So you will only end up, by being discerning and allowing Pluto discernment of spiritual matters, 12th house stuff, you'll only end up working with high vibrational people. So trust your instinct, trust your gut, trust your pricking of the thumbs with your inspiration and intuition regarding those things. and you are likely to see great soul growth, great leaps forward in your understanding of who you are on the planet. This is the realm of miracles with Pluto here, and it amplifying. If it's exalted in the 12th house, we would see amplification of miracles, growth in miracles as well in our life too. Could be little miracles, but like, I don't know, needing a car park and suddenly there's one for you and you manifested it, to big miracles, you know, healing, I don't know, some dire disease or something like that. It is possible under Pluto's transit through the 12th house. So I find this quite an exciting transit to be entering into myself as a Pisces rising person. If you also are Pisces rising and entering into this, I hope you're excited too. Thank you so much for joining me for this series all about Pluto. I have been intending to do this for a number of years, and I finally got around to doing it at a very transformational period of my life. No coincidences there that Pluto had me wait until my life was going through one of its largest transformational period that I've been through in ages. So I'm very grateful to Pluto for his energy and his work. But I've had enough now. Thanks, Pluto. I've done the videos. Let's call it a day. So thank you for joining me for this series. And do stay tuned in, subscribed to everything that's happening here at Guiding Star Astrology. I long to bring you more wonderful videos on astrology in the future. Thank you and God bless.